Hello and welcome to Bloke on the Range. Now today I'm lucky enough to be able to bring you a lightweight BREN Mk.3 courtesy of machinegunstore.ch. Now the BREN gun series was introduced into British service just before the Second World War. It was a Czech design with input from Enfield, starting from the ZB-26 light machine gun, which was available in all sorts of calibers, particularly 8mm Mauser. Now at the end of the development process it was converted to inches and 303, hence the curved magazine, and replaced the Lewis in British service. Now, during the war, the Mark II was a simplified version made in Canada, and then in 1944 they introduced the Mark III, which is a lightweight, shortened barrel version intended for paratrooper and jungle use in the Far East theatre. Now, they weren't used that much during the Second World War, but certainly in post-war conflicts like Malaya and Borneo, you see them in archive footage and things like that. Now, compared to the Mark I and the Mark II, it's about 19 pounds in weight as opposed to 23. The barrel is shorter, the front sight is a bit closer to the rear sight, so a shorter sight radius, but we got to have a play on the range with it and actually film it, so I'll be inserting some shooting footage in appropriate moments. So what we're going to do today is talk about the mechanics of it. We're going to have it in bits and see how it all goes together, talk about a few of the differences with the Mark I and the Mark II, and in another video we're going to get down on the floor, grub around a bit with it and show you the differences between how shooting the BREN was taught compared to shooting a rifle, because it really wasn't done quite the same. So I have various helpers around today, which is great, so we're going to bring the camera in handheld and have a look at this beauty. So starting at the business end, we have a cone type flash hider, because at this stage slotted ones were not a thing. We have a British style protected front sight, nice rectangular blade there, adjustable for elevation by replacing it with one of a different height, and for windage by driving it with a hammer and a drift either side. There weren't screw cramps to adjust it like there were for the rifles. Now, moving back here, we have the bipod, which is on this particular one adjustable for length. In fact, the Mark IV BREN is a Mark II converted to lightweight, and that didn't have an adjustable bipod. But we'll look at that in more detail when we take it apart. Here we have gas regulator with 4 different settings. That's the indicator point there, and smallest, second smallest, third, which is the normal usage position, and the largest, which would be sort of for Arctic or conditions where you're not getting enough pressure. So moving back now, we have an attachment point for the sling. Over here we have, they call these fouling ports, and that's so that crap can blow out from the piston. We have gas escape ports here for the rear of piston travel. We have a carry handle that can be up to be out of the way. It can be down, which is also kind of out of the way, and what's kind of cool is that there's a lug on it right here and a notch in the receiver there. And what you can do, which is kind of tricky, is you can pull that out and lock it in like that so that it sticks out. And the original idea behind this was that it was for use on the anti-aircraft tripod to hang on to, but it's actually very good when shooting from the hip. Otherwise, when you're shooting from the hip, let's just fold it back into another position, you can put your hands under the bipod. And the bipod actually locks onto the receiver there. And it's the same on both sides. Although I certainly found when shooting it, when I was hanging onto this handle with it locked out, that it had the tendency to unfold itself, which was suboptimal. So moving back now, we have the barrel release, which goes up, and when I take it apart, we'll look at that in more detail. That's fairly easily accessible, and when the barrel's off, you can manipulate it with that handle there. That has a lock little catch that locks on under there. Back further we have, on the top, we have a magazine opening cover. And on the bottom we have an ejection cover, which is similar but rather more substantially made. Keeps mud and cack out of the action when the gun's not in use. So moving back some more, we've got the safety and fire selector. Here it's on the safe position. Forward is A for automatic. Backwards is R for repetition, which is British for semi-auto. And actually the trigger pull is different depending on which setting it's on. This here is the magazine release. It actually is designed quite well and it falls against the hand as I'll show you in a minute. So the rear sight is folding. It's got a 1/10 of an inch rear aperture and it's adjustable from 200 up to 1600 yards in clicks, which is rather simpler than the drum that was on the Mark 1. Let's just leave that up there for the minute. We have a pin which is missing its retaining pin, which holds the receiver together. So on the right hand side up the front here we've got that's for mounting the tripod or onto a Mk.3 mount or anti-aircraft mount. Moving back we have the Mark 1 style folding cocking handle on this one. The Mark 2 style isn't folding and it folds and locks like that. Put it back to cock the action. And then back down here there's a mount for the tripod and a sling bar. Okay, so let's strip it. First thing we need to do is check the gun is clear. So we're going to magazine off. And as you see, the magazine catch falls very easily to the hand. And if that's folded down, you've got even more movement to rock a magazine off. Put that away. Cock the gun. This is in fact already cocked. Fire off the action. As you see, it moves quite a lot. It's an open bolt gun, which means that when the gun is cocked, the working parts are to the rear, and the first thing that happens when you pull the trigger is that they fly forward, which causes a certain amount of recoil because Newton. We can actually strip this in several orders. It doesn't really matter. So let us first take off today the barrel group. So handle up, press the catch, off it comes. We can remove the locking piece there, like that, by pushing down with a dummy round. We can then press, that shouldn't come out, but it does. We've then got someone's hair in there. We've got the butt group. When we pull that back, we should get the piston group appearing. So this rod here is attached to the mainspring, which is in the butt. We'll pull off to the side and we can pull the piston group out, put that off to the side. We'll look at all these individually in a minute. So then we can separate the butt group from the body group, and in fact we can take the bipod off of the body. Right, so the butt group has the trigger mechanism, the bent in it, and the safety catch. That is blocked. See, that can't move. If I move it to repetition, we'll get semi-automatic fire. So we have a disconnector here that gets hit by the operating rod as it comes back forward. If we put it on automatic, that disconnector is held out the way and the bent just stays down, and the operating rod and the breech block just run back and forth until it runs out of ammunition. Now the butt group has a pair of rails that slide in grooves in the body group like that. These are expensive to manufacture, let's not beat about the bush. These are not that well production engineered. They are very much 1930s designs. So what we've got in here is a ruddy grate cavity. We've got where the op rod comes in down there. We've got feed ramps we've got an ejector, and then we've got a locking shoulder here. Now the breech block is a tilting bolt, and it locks up in the top of the receiver here. Hope there's enough light to see what's going on there. And what we've got on the Mark III BREN is we've got material taken away where it's not necessary. And in fact, some of the early Mark Is had material taken away in various places as well. That was deleted as unnecessary. So at this end, you've got the bearing for the bipod and the fouling holes and the gas escape holes. Other than that, there's not that much going on here. So this is the collar that holds the barrel, and it's interrupted threads, and they are in fact threads cut on an angle. And which way around does it go? That way around. Which means that when you tighten it down, he says, it tightens the barrel against the receiver. If they were just straight lugs, there'd be a bit more play in there, but they're not. They are actually cut on an angle, and it does help to squeeze the barrel into the correct position. So the piston group is actually quite funky. Up the front you've got classic piston head, piston rings, all the way down, nothing exciting there. An ejection slot, because of course this ejects out the bottom. Rails on which this runs, and what I find quite interesting about it is that the breech block is actually captive. It is held quite well on there, and you've got a pair of rails there and some corresponding grooves that mate together, and then the piston post does all the interesting stuff here. Not only does it control the movement of the breech block, so when it chambers, it gets pushed up like that. This rises, locks into against the locking shoulder in the receiver, and then what happens is that the piston post, it's very difficult to see, the piston post there hits the firing pin, which is there. So for the second time in the video, I've got my bent and my sear backwards. This is the bent. The sear is in the lower receiver, in the butt group. So that's held by the sear. It's released. The whole thing goes forward, strips around out the magazine, chambers it. Breech block hits the face of the back face of the barrel, pushes it back. The cam surface there causes the back end of the breech block to rise. It's now locked, and then the piston post hits the firing pin. Bang! You can see that happening there. Bang! Cartridge fires. Gas pressure gets into the gas port. Piston starts to move back. This part here of the piston post then cams the back end of the breech block down, and then the whole lot goes back, and then the ejector, the extractor pulls the cartridge case out, and then the ejector in the body group knocks it out, and you can actually take the ejector out quite easily. You can, he says. So as you can see, that comes out far too easily, and you've got the extractor that's keyed in here and rides in there. You've got a spring, and you've got what's called the extractor stay, which is this piece here, and it just clicks back in there, and that gives it all the spring force it needs to operate. So onto the barrel group now. You've got your interrupted threads, chamber, the feed ramp there, and the gas regulator. We can take it out with a that is pushed in already. The gas regulator, if you can actually turn it with a live round like this, or a combi tool. We don't have the combi tool, but when that is pushed in and that's aligned like that, you can drop the whole thing out the side quite easily, and then you've got all the gas ports that lead diagonally. So that one is the smallest gas port, and it leads diagonally through there, taking gas from the port in the barrel, which is not top dead center, it's actually quite offset. Gas goes through there, it's redirected and is squirted through that hole there, where it hits the piston head. Well, there's an expansion chamber. Goes into the expansion chamber, hits the piston head, does its business. So, they were quite insistent that people not stick matchsticks and pieces of wood to try and clean these. I believe this is a stainless part. It must be, because if they said don't clean it and they were shooting exclusively corrosive ammunition, it could have got nasty. So let's just line that back up. The training materials say that you cannot reassemble it wrong. Let's see if that is in fact true. So let's put it on the third setting, which is standard. Let's push that little pin back out there so that it's retained. So then let's put the bipod back on next, that way round. We'll take the butt group, line up the rails there. So next let's put the breech block back on the piston, push that to the side, push that in there. We can then close that up. Let's not quite close it up. Let us put the locking collar back in, and this one's got a slightly sticky catch. What's interesting here is that the same detente that serves to hold the magazine opening in place actually serves to hold the locking collar in, which I think is an interesting bit of design. So making sure that the locking collar is open. What's also interesting, I forgot to mention before, is that you've actually got a dovetail groove on the bottom of the barrel here, this thick bit that goes onto a corresponding rail there. Holds it all nicely in place, making sure that the gas regulator is not out of line. Lock that down, make sure it's locked. On the Mark 1 there's an interlock. There's a safety feature in there that prevents things going off when it's not locked, but not on the later ones. So then finally we put the pin back in and then function test it. So cock the gun. We're on safe, automatic. And if it's on automatic, it will just keep running like that. If it's on repetition, it won't ride forward. It's actually a harder trigger pull when it's set to repetition. And actually the entire body group can slide on the butt group under recoil like this. That's a good quarter of an inch or so of travel on that. Now one last interesting mechanical thing is the last round hold open. So let's just run that forward. This has a really super positive last round hold open. So that won't go. And what happens is when you drop the magazine, it will drop onto the sear. So now it will go forward. It's actually, there's a big lug on the back of the magazine here that stops the bolt short of the sear. So let's do that again. So we've been firing, we're out of ammunition, and then all you have to do is replace the magazine and then keep firing. And what's bizarre is if you look at the early training films, their immediate action for an empty magazine was the following. So let's they cocked the gun, even though it wasn't necessary, and then took the magazine off, then replaced the magazine, then continued firing.
When the assistant puts the 10th magazine on the gun, he calls out 10th magazine, barrel. Watch it again. 10th magazine, barrel.
This is something that I was watching it and thinking, why? Why? Typical bizarre British military thinking. It's like, Not necessary at all.
But the gun that helps our men to keep their tails up today is the BREN, a nasty little Spitfire that can spew out bullets at the rate of 480 rounds a minute. Loading is by magazine holding 30 rounds, a matter of 2 seconds.
Now, one final thing. I often get asked by people who are rim jam obsessives as to what the BREN has special in it to prevent rim jams. The answer is it doesn't have anything special in it to prevent rim jams. It has soldiers being trained to introduce the ammunition, these are all dummies, look, such that it is correctly oriented. And all the ammunition going to infantry sections was provided in charges. And you can see in there how the ammunition is stacked. Now, they were exercises that were expected to fill 15 rounds from charges into a magazine in 30 seconds, if I remember rightly, and any rim that went wrong, and to be honest, you'd have to almost do it deliberately to get it wrong, you'd fail. They were quite insistent on that. There's no mechanism, unlike in the rifle, the magazine spring pressure is actually quite significant, and I mean, let's just, could we? Yeah, we could get it wrong. That would jam. There's no question. And I'm not saying this because it's S&B ammunition, but that would jam because you've got a lot of weight of ammunition. You've got a lot of spring pressure on it because it's a 30-round magazine, although loaded to 28 normally, and that just popped up and actually cleared itself out. But imagine if it was your top round that you got in wrong, and you put it on the gun, it would go like this. Which lets me show the immediate action drill, which in all cases was cock the gun, which is valid, because you've got to remember this is open bolt. So when you're used to closed bolt guns, there's a certain different mindset with open bolt. If you were to pull the magazine off right now or something, the bolt will fly forward, probably, possibly, depending on the nature of the jam. The safe condition for an open bolt gun is actually cocked. So you cock the gun, which means that the bend is being held by the sear. Then take the magazine off. Then check in your magazine. Oh, it's screwed. And then I can just fix it. And then magazine back on and carry on firing. So thanks for watching. I hope that was at least vaguely interesting. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Please give machinegunstore.ch a visit. Please consider supporting us on Patreon if you haven't already done so. Many thanks to our existing patrons for helping to fund the massive quantities of ammunition we put downrange to get the footage on this. And see you again sometime. Bye.